Hi. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hello and good evening.
Hey, so you are Ben Cartwright.
Yes,
And you're an airline pilot.
I am.
And you're one of the coolest Aussies I've ever known.
One of the only Aussies you've ever known.
Oh, no, I've got a whole bunch of Aussie friends in my stable. Oh, yeah, and they all try to get me to eat Vegemite. Danielle, have you ever eaten Vegemite?
I have not.
Okay, don't.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm well. You have pretty blue eyes.
I was super disappointed I didn't get to meet you.
I know, but we get to meet each other now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, he's the one who let me use his flamethrower.
Did you actually do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you'd seen the video, you would have known.
Yeah, Danielle watches all my.
Video.
She watches all my videos.
Busted! I missed that
Busted,
one.
yeah. Well, that's
So
all right.
busted.
That's all right. Who watches all their ex-husbands' videos? That's crazy. But yeah, I was standing on the back of the blue whale and shooting at. So you had a flamethrower in your Corvette. How cool are you? You're like the coolest dude on the planet. Until
Thank you very much.
Until the Corvette broke.
Yeah. It's still in the shop too, so I'm just waiting on the shop to tell me what is actually wrong with it.
Well, what's wrong with it is it's not an RX-8, and I don't know how you repair that. But were you?
Ben Heron, you need more empathy than that.
You're
Seeing
right.
How, it's your Lamborghini.
You're right. Oh, please don't go
that
there.
you
No,
purchased.
yeah, you're right. No.
It was in the shop.
Oh man,
for
I'm glad I have such a pretty conscious.
2 years.
Yeah,
2
thank you.
years.
I
2
need.
years.
I needed you around to remind me to have more empathy over the years. That's what I needed. Anyway, so how often do you fly?
I fly about, I work about 12 days a month, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not going to mention what the airline is.
No, but I've worked for a number of airlines. So up until about 3 years ago, I was working for an overseas airline in Qatar called Qatar Airways. That's in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
I was flying the 330 and the 380 over there, so the world's largest airliner.
Oh.
And yeah, then I came back here and flew 747 cargo before I started my current job. So if it's got wings, if it's got engines, I can probably fly it.
Wow, that's impressive. What's your favorite airline to fly? Your favorite bird?
Oh, the airline aircraft. Yeah, the 380 was a lot of fun. But the one that I'm on now, the 220, the Airbus 220, it's a really nice aircraft to fly. It's the latest generation. It's they've got the best technology, so it's really good.
Okay, so what's the worst part about your job other than the passengers? Boy, if those passengers weren't on there, it'd sure would be fun, right?
Well, most of the time it's a really good day, but when it's a really bad day, it's a really bad day. And if something goes wrong, it's not going to end well.
Yeah, I mean, you not only are you super cool, and I know you're super cool because I hung out with you for a while, but you're pretty brave to have a job where you get skin in the game like that. And that's, they're talking about all these autonomous aircraft and these drones and everything and these eVTOLs that, oh no, there's no pilot. No, we just you just get in and you trust us. There's some guy in a warehouse making sure you don't drop out of the sky.
One of the big differences from a standard pilot to the airline pilot is we go through training every 6 to 12 months, and in that we'll go into a simulator session, and that's when they can do the really tricky stuff like engine failures, complex failures. So we can train for engine failure on takeoff, which is if it isn't executed correctly, it can end up really badly. So yeah, we're fairly highly trained, and I was in the Air Force before I joined the airlines as well. So in there, it's just training, and you're always thinking about what's going on right now and what's going to go wrong in sort of 10 minutes time if something does go wrong.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really going to bring it up, but something could go wrong. I love the series like Airline Disasters where they show like, somebody farted too hard in the bathroom and it started a fire, and like, how they can figure out what happened, like a bolt was loose and then it brought the plane down and everything. I mean, just any number of things can happen. Have you ever been in a tricky situation where you're like, okay, I wish I wasn't here?
Yeah, I have. I've done a number of things. Like, I've got to first up say that the aircraft is really well maintained, and the aircraft can go long time operating continuously. without a failure. So it's just sometimes it's just the wrong place at the wrong time. I've had to shut an engine down, which was interesting. That was my first one. But probably the trickiest one was we're in formation in a group of 3. This is when I was in the military. Flew into cloud, and it started to ice from the front of the canopy right up to where I was. So I ended up flying against the canopy. I've got my helmet up against the side of the canopy. I'm looking out at the lead aircraft, and I can't see anything in front of me because there's ice. We're in cloud as well. And that was all good because we trained for that. But then suddenly my engine instruments started to malfunction, and I thought that my engine was going to fail at any second. It turned out that the engine, that all it was an indication problem. So the ice had melted and gone into the instruments, but it was still quite hairy there for about 15 minutes. I broke away from the formation, circled around to the ground in a maneuver we practiced a lot, and was able to put it on the ground. And that's when we were able to go back and fault find and see that it was just an indication problem. But you always train for it. It's a real life. It's a real emergency. And it was good because I got to able to employ all my skills, and we had a great outcome as well. So
now was that a plane where you could have ejected if you had to?
Yes, yeah, it was.
Did you?
How do you train for something like that? Like, is it simulated or you're? How do you know?
When we need to do a forced landing, like in the Air Force, we only have a single engine generally, or sometimes there's multi-engine, but yeah, single engine high performance aircraft. When we come back to land, which is every sortie, we generally do maybe 1 or 2 practices about landing with a simulated engine out. So we're always training and always thinking about, okay, what goes wrong? What happens right now if something goes wrong? How can I get on the ground safely? So it was always, what's going to go wrong next?
Do you know anybody that had to eject?
Yeah, I actually saw an ejection in 2005.
Oh.
I was in the roulettes, which is like the equivalent of the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels.
Mm-hmm.
I was the commentator in that one. And they were doing a maneuver where one aircraft comes in from overhead the crowd, and another 5 aircraft do a barrel roll, a maneuver called a barrel roll.
Yeah.
And at the top of the maneuver, the 5th or the 6th aircraft joins the formation. And as he came in a little bit too quickly, and he needed to get away from the formation because he realized he wasn't going to be able to safely join the formation. So he rolled, and as he rolled, he clipped wings. And he went into a spin about 1,300 feet inverted. So he had about 1.3 seconds after he ejected before he hit the ground. So it was a pretty close thing.
Wow. And the other aircraft that he hit was okay?
Yeah, that was good. That was my very good friend, Mark Ellis. He was able to steer away from the orphanage on the ground, and he got it under control.
The
and
orphanage.
Then he was able to.
Yeah, like, isn't that the worst nightmare? Like, if you know you're going down, there's nothing you can do about it. Just steer away from the orphanage, because you don't want that to be your legacy.
Yeah,
You know?
he's always. We're always in contact as well over the radio. So I had a radio on me. He had a radio on his aircraft. And as he realized that he was hit, we've got certain code phrases that we can use to terminate the mission. And he said, knock it off. Said knock it off twice. The first time was nice and low. And the second time his voice was like 4 octaves and went, knock it off.
So when you're, I mean, do you miss, of course it's going to be more fun to fly the acrobatic planes, but is it still kind of fun, cool to fly the airliners?
It is, and I just, I'm a first officer at the moment, and I said to my captain the other day, just as we took off, it was about 5:30 in the morning. We came over the clouds, sun was coming up, and it was just beautiful. So it really is a scene that you don't get to see when you're sitting on the ground. And it's very, very rare that you sort of take a moment out and go, hey, look, this is the coolest job in the world.
Can you make suggestions, like if something on the, and you have to do checklists, that's fun, right? Checklists, fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you see something on the checklist that needs to be added or something, you can make suggestions to change things. Because I think
absolutely.
It used to not be that way, but like lately you can. Pilots, individuals can make suggestions.
Yeah, that's right. So we can go through there, and we always talk about having standard operating procedures. And one of the checklists that actually helps us to keep standard between crews, because we always fly with somebody else generally. I've flown with a number of guys occasionally that I've flown with before, but generally it's a new crew. So you're always got to go in and establish, hey, I'm me, you're you, but we can get this aircraft to our destination safely and in an efficient manner. And that's one of the checklist, the things we use checklists for. If we see something that maybe could be better, like a system's upgraded on the aircraft and now it no longer needs that step that we used to do, we can certainly go and raise it to our management and say, hey, look, this was here, this step. Now we could do without it, or we could change it to adapt to the new aircraft system.
Yeah, and there's just so much to do before and after you land, but during the flight, it's really, you're just kind of a passenger yourself, right? For the most part. Hopefully, if things are going well.
The busiest time is takeoff and landing, believe it or not.
Right.
So yeah, things are going to get really nasty when close to the ground. So where 100% of the attention is getting the aircraft safely airborne or getting it safely on the deck.
Right.
But yeah, in the cruise, we're just monitoring aircraft systems, and the great thing about now is the level of automation is so high that we can sort of sit back and relax. Once upon a time, back sort of World War II days, there was a navigator, there was a flight engineer who was responsible for aircraft systems, there was a radio operator, and there were generally two pilots. Now we can do away with those other three guys, and we can just have two pilots. And if you want to take it a step forward, they're talking 50 to 100 years, maybe they get rid of one pilot or maybe both of the pilots, and we end up with drones.
Yeah, no. I gotta have somebody. I gotta have a company man in there that's got skin in the game. I don't want some 19-year-old in a box somewhere remotely flying my airline going, boss, we got a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
would you ride it at the moment? Not at all.
No. But you remember. You're not. I don't think you're not as aged as me, but you remember when kids used to be allowed to come up in the cockpit, like during flights.
Yeah,
during flights.
And that's how I used to go up there as well and annoy the pilots and ask them questions and whatnot.
Yeah,
and it was great because on a 15-hour flight, if you had 3 or 4 guys come up or girls come up and talk, it was a way of keeping us awake and on the ball. And they say, "Hey, what's that gauge there?" And you go, I don't really know what that gauge is.
Did you do that?
I wanted to ask, tell me about the first time you came to the conclusion that you wanted to be a pilot.
Okay, so late 80s, circa 86, 88, there was a little movie that came out. You might have heard of it, called Top Gun. And that's when I wanted to be a pilot.
Really?
And, yeah, it's true. It's
How old were you?
I was... just trying to think. 88. Yeah, so 13 at the time.
Okay.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Did you want to be Maverick or Goose?
I wanted to be the bad guy. It's always better to be the bad guy.
Really?
Yeah.
What was his name?
Iceman.
Iceman, of course, yeah. How many times have you seen that movie?
Probably more times than anybody else, yeah.
Nice.
When was the last time you saw that movie?
The last time I tried to get my wife to watch it, and she's like, boring.
Yeah.
So,
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was touching over there.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions for our airline pilot, our military pilot, please put it in the chat. I have a question. I found this out recently because I watch a lot of TV, and I found out, and tell me if this is true, that if a passenger dies during a flight, you just leave him in the seat.
It depends on the airline, but there's no storage space anywhere else. So
what are you going to do with them?
The best place is to leave him in the seat, cover him up, and then.
Oh, you do cover him up, right? So he's not sitting
absolutely.
there like making a face and like scaring the kids. Like you'll cover him up,
Yeah.
and if there's someone sitting next to him, they have to sit next to a dead dude for the whole flight.
Well, it depends if there's a seat available as well. Like if we can reseat somebody, we'll always try and do that. But occasionally. And it's not all the time. Like we've got a lot of resources. We have a special number we can call on the ground with doctors, and we can try and get the doctors to weigh in on the situation. And we've also got a really comprehensive medical kit, including a defibrillator that we can use, and we're trained to use airborne. So yeah, sometimes it's unfortunate that somebody does die, and then then we've got to deal with them. But there's not a lot of places we can put them, unfortunately.
Does the flight crew have their own secret bathroom or anything on certain planes? I guess you do, because sometimes I'd be on years ago, I'd see the pilot come walking down like, hello, talking to everybody, hello, and then he's heading to the John. Like I always thought.
Yeah.
Like, but you have your own special like sleeping quarters in some larger planes and everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. On the 380, we had our own little bathroom, and then we also had our own little bunk. So generally, the 380 would fly for like 15 hours, and when you want to do that, you have 4 pilots. So generally, 2 pilots will be the takeoff and landing pilots. So they'll take off, fly for about 7 hours, and then the other 2 guys that were sitting in the jump seats, we call them, the seats behind the pilots, they'll go and have a bit of rest, and then after about the 7-hour mark, we'll change, and so they'll fly in the cruise for 7 hours, and then just before we it's called top of descent, or we come in for landing, we'll change again, and then the guys that took off will land it. And so the bunks are really cool. They've got their own little air conditioning. They've got their own full lay flat beds and seats. So it's good, but you need to do that when you're flying 15 hours.
Okay. Someone, and I hope I'm pronouncing this is right. Sunrise Water Media says, has Ben ever done a Immelman turn?
Immelman turn?
Immelman
yes.
turn? What is that?
Well, there's a whole lot of aerobatics that you can get up there, and generally up, you can put the rudder in, come back down, and there's a whole lot of variation. So you can go up, you can turn over, you can do like a loop, and when you get to the top of the loop, you can roll back upright.
Right.
And that's your Immelman.
And do I have to get a special ticket for this? Is it just first class that enjoys this turn, or? Oh, you're talking about the military plane. Oh, I thought
the most important thing, is to learn to talk with your hands, and the left hand is always the enemy, so you're always trying to shoot down the enemy.
Okay. All right. Where did you serve when you were in the Army? What?
Air Force, yeah. So big difference, but I was in Australian Air Force, but I did just under 20 years there. Flew a whole lot of different types. Flew trainers. I flew tankers. I flew the VIP transport like Air Force One. So I'd flown a fair variety of aircraft.
Okay, Grumpy Vlogger wants to know: have you ever wanted to fly a C-5?
I haven't flown one, but I've got a couple of friends who have flown them. The big aircraft are great, but I like the little ones that go upside down. And people get upset when you go fly a C-5 upside down.
What about like a hover, what do you call them, a Harrier?
Harriers, yeah. I personally don't like that kind of flying because they say that if it, like you're hovering and then something goes wrong, you pretty much got to eject straight away.
Right.
But I like to go fast in a forward direction. And I like to do the stuff that you do in the FPV flying, so the low stuff close to the ground, flying through trees. I personally don't fly through trees. We've got a 500 feet height requirement, so we've got to be above 500 feet. But flying down a valley, flying through clouds or something that gives you that rush, that really speed rush, that's what I like to fly. Okay.
What's the craziest thing you've ever done in any aircraft?
Okay, so I was part of the aerobatics team and flying 7 aircraft in close formation, flying them through aerobatic maneuvers. That's the craziest sort of thing that I've done. I've flown down valleys. There's a place in Australia called Mount Kosciuszko, and that's the highest mountain in Australia. And during the winter, it snows down there, so everyone goes down to snow, but it's not very large. But we would get, as military guys, we'd be allowed to fly up the valley, and there's nothing better than flying up the valley and watching the little guys at their ski school, like the 3 or 4, 5-year-olds. They see the first aircraft coming up, and we fly in a 7, like a big snake. And I'm the last aircraft. So they see the first aircraft to go overhead, and they're watching it. And then they see the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one. And then they watch it go throughout the whole sky. And generally when they get to about there, they fall over backwards, and they all fall over. It's hilarious.
Newfoundland Drones wants some advice. What advice would you give someone who wants to become a pilot? What's the best way to start?
Okay.
To become a man pilot.
Start learning as much as you can. In Australia, there was something called the Air Cadets, and it was like Cub Scouts for the air. So I was able to go and do that when I was in grade school. And I'm not too sure about over here. It's like ROTC, but it was a little bit younger. And I was able to express interest and learn about marching, learn about discipline, but also learn about aircraft, and just try and absorb as much as you can. Study about different types of aircraft. Military aircraft are always the most fun because they go upside down, and you can say, hey, look, this one versus this one, or the A-10 has a really big gun and it can shoot a lot of tanks on the ground.
Right.
Whereas an F-35 is one of the stealth fighters, That's the latest generation stuff, and they're really good at shooting aircraft down. So you can go through and rattle these facts off with all your friends and just bore the girls at school, bore them to death.
Yeah.
So, it's...
But you know what? A lot of regional airports and private pilots, manned pilots, will have programs for young people. You can come out and check out the planes and ask your local pilots questions and things like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and one of the things that's amazed me in America is flying is so cheap compared to how it is in Australia. You've got a population that's about 10 times of what it is in Australia, so there's a lot more consumerism, a lot more flying just to support the population. So you can go out and you get an aircraft, go for a fly, save up money to go for an introductory flight, and see what happens when you pull back on the stick, what happens when you push forward on the stick or left and right, and how to steer it on the ground, which is a lot different to how you drive a car. So just getting these experiences, and then you go through and you can play at home like Jeff does on Microsoft Flight Sim, and just learn as much as you can about flying.
I've seen the faces of young kids light up. My morning show partner is a pilot, and I fly in these little planes, I call them. Comparatively, Danielle, have you ever flown in a small plane? Have you ever been? Okay, it's a lot different, isn't it?
It is.
Than just being on a big old airline. It's such a difference. You feel every little turn and bump, and
you feel like you're flying.
You do.
Yeah.
And that's part of the appeal. And I've been in Jason's plane a couple times with kids in there, people flying for the first time, and I look back and they're just, I mean, you could just see the wheels turning.
The story that I told you about when I had to break away from the formation and come into land, it had a little coder on that. So as I came into land, put it on the deck, and then taxied off onto the little tarmac, getting ready to shut it down and do everything. Got out of the aircraft, and it was about 10 minutes before the rest of the aircraft came down to land. So as I was doing that, this little fellow, he's about 9 years old, he's on his dirt bike, and he comes screaming up to me, and he's like really, really excited. He goes, "Mister, is that your plane?" And I went, "Yeah, that is." And I looked down at his leg, and there was blood coming out of his leg from a big gash. And I said, "Dude, what happened to your leg?" He goes, "Oh, I was driving along, and I was watching you come into the land, and I wasn't watching where I was going, so I hit a tree stump."
Oh, God.
And,
That's...
And it is. When you see an aircraft go overhead, like I still do it out here today, an aircraft goes overhead, I stop and watch it, and today it was a Hercules. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's whole groups of plane spotters and people that are just aviation enthusiasts. I mean, hell, people that fly drones and that have their Part 107 are really not that far away from getting their manned certification.
Well, absolutely. And all the study you do for your Part 107, you can just take it a little bit further, and then you can become a recreational pilot and start the process to, if you want to, ultimately become an airline pilot. I noticed a couple of weeks ago you said, you've got to go through all this stuff that you don't have to know, but it's like weather. Get the METAR.
METARs. Sectional charts.
Yeah, but that's what we use every day. So I've got an iPad. I can go through all the weather there. I can read it and see what it's going to do, not only now, what it's going to do in 3 hours' time or in 12 hours' time.
Right.
I can see the sectional charts, so I can see if I've got to get some airspace clearance to get out of airspace or into airspace. It is really what the study you do for your 107 will be the foundation, and a really solid foundation for later on. It is
good information to have.
Yeah,
it really is.
The questions I saw that Chris from Sunrise Water Media, he said, "Has my accent changed since I started flying in the States?" Mm-hmm. It has. A lot of the Australians will speak very quickly, and as do a couple of New Yorkers as well. And sometimes when they do that, it's really hard to understand, especially using different phraseologies that we may use overseas. One of the ones I can give you an example of overseas flying through European airspace. If we want to go for a reduce, say we're going out like this and we come back, we want to do a shortcut across. We'll just say, can we get track shortening? So can we fly a shorter distance along the aircraft's track? It's a long way about going, can we have a shortcut, please?
Yeah.
And in the FAA airspace, you just say, can I have a shortcut? So when I first started flying over here about 5 years ago, I said, can I get track shortening? And I see the captain beside me go, you want what? Mm-hmm. And then the FAA air traffic controller says, you want what? And I said, can I get a shortcut? And he goes, yeah, you should have just asked for that.
Yeah, I want
So-
track shortening. It's like an ingredient to a birthday cake or something to us.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a couple of words as well that I say differently now because I think the classic one we spoke about when we were on the Route 66 is tomato versus tomato.
Tomato. Yeah.
Yeah, so I asked a guy in a diner if I could have a hamburger with no tomato on it, and he went, "What?" So I had to say no tomato, and he went, "Ah, right, gotcha."
To be honest, he said, "Do what?" That's what he said. That's what he said. Flying Brian FPV wants to know how many hours are in your logbook, and do you have your own personal plane?
I don't have my own personal plane just yet, but I haven't counted it up recently, but it's over 7,000 hours. So,
Okay.
they say you got to have 10,000 hours to get become an expert at something, but it's up there.
And that's overall, but you do count how many hours for any particular plane, like so.
Yeah, so roughly 3,000 hours on a 330, about 1,500 hours on a 380.
Mm-hmm.
Only about 500 or 600 hours on a 747, and I'm just going off the top of my head here, but 1,200 hours on the aircraft that go upside down, so they're the ones I probably hold most dear.
Okay. 2 more questions from me.
Sure.
And I think I've asked Jason Shappert this before, but why is it that English is the international language for aviation? Why is that? And
I think it's just because we wrote the rule book.
Yeah, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, when everybody sat down and said, right, what language are we going to use? The English guys went, let's use English.
Right. So it's harder for foreign pilots to get certified because they have to learn another language too, pretty much.
Yeah, and the guys that I flew with in the Middle East, everybody had to be certified to, they called it English Language Proficiency Level 4. So a Level 6 is a native speaker. Level 5 makes a few mistakes, but level 4, everyone has to be level 4. So it's a reduced vocabulary. Like your track shortening may pop up, but everyone talks in feet, and you can say request takeoff, request landing. Everyone sort of knows what those phrases mean. So you don't have to be an expert in some conversational English, but you do have to know certain phrases.
Right. And my last question is, have you ever seen a UFO?
You know, Ken, I looked out the window flying for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
And I've never seen one yet. And the places you think you would see them, like over the Indian Ocean, the middle of the night, nothing's around. Over outback Australia, nothing's around. Couldn't see one. So I'm like Scully and Mulder. I want to believe, but I haven't seen them yet.
Okay. All right. Danielle, did you have any other questions?
I do. How many women are airline pilots? Like, what's the percentage?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At the moment, it's about 15%, I think.
Wow.
But, you know, it's increasing, and there's a lot of good studies, a lot of good groups that will go out and try and recruit airline pilots that are women. There's women in aviation. There's a lot of at recruitment days for the regional airlines, especially. They'll have women pilots there, especially to talk to the young up-and-coming women who want to pursue a career in aviation. And it was traditionally seen as a male job, but now we're trying to change that perception and say, if you're good enough and you want to have the drive, and that's probably the key thing, you've got to have the drive and the want to pursue a career in aviation. I love flying. I love the flying out of the clouds. I'm always looking at clouds out the window. But you've got to have that drive. If you don't have that drive, it can get very tedious. It's like some days it's long nights, some days it's flying through the night. Sometimes you've got to do the walk around the aircraft to pre-flight the aircraft in the rain. So you've got to have that passion in there, and that's what we're hoping to do. And just get the next generation of pilots into the cockpit.
Okay, I have to add a couple more questions.
Sure.
Have you seen the Northern Lights from the cockpit?
Yes, and they're spectacular.
Is it? Is it?
Yeah, it is really nice. When I was flying the 747s, flying up over Canada, and the I think it's called the Blue Spruce route. That's over Reykjavik, over Iceland, going into Europe. Look out the window, and lots of green lights. It's very, very nice.
Yeah. And someone wants to know what kind of drones do you fly?
I've got I do have a FPV drone. I've got the DJI FPV POS.
Got the POS? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Got the Inspire 2.
Okay.
I've got Mini Air 2S or the Air 2S, and I've got another Chinese little drone. I've got the Star Wars speeder bike drones. So yeah, I got a lot of them, but generally I'm flying camera drones at the moment. But I'm hoping to get into FPV drones after you showed me that.
Yeah, I took you for a ride. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, a little proximity flying.
I saw King Herod the Great asked me what's the highest drone I've ever seen flying. 1,300 feet. It's flying into a place called Cochin in India. And as we're coming down finals, which is coming into land.
Oh, you saw this from a plane?
Yeah, I did. And so when you see, I sort of take it with a grain of salt with all these drone sightings, but this was definitely a drone. It was about 500 feet displaced from where I was. And it was white against a green background. It was really super obvious that it was a drone, like a DJI Phantom sort of Generation 2 would have been about right when it was. And it was just sitting there as well. Generally, the birds, they've got a bit of speed, either forward or back. When you're overtaking them, they look like they're going backwards. You can generally see the movement moving across the canopy, either dropping back across the canopy or going forward if you're overtaking them. And this was definitely not doing that. It was just staying still in one position.
Well, hopefully they got a good shot of you. But did you report it?
At that stage, no, because the air traffic control in India didn't really care about drones at that time. So yeah, it would have been a little bit of a like they just wouldn't have cared. So I chose not to report it. That's all.
Well, I could talk to you all night about this. You're a fascinating guy, and it was really fun going down Route 66 with you and your busted Corvette. But please, before you go, fold back the first class curtain. Tell us something that, as the general public, would either fascinate us or terrify us about the airline industry. Give us a little secret, some tidbit that we shouldn't know. Tell us something we shouldn't know. Do it.
Yeah.
What do you got? I know you got a whole host of things you're thinking about.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting question. But yeah, when you flush the toilet,
oh god,
some blue stuff, the blue goo that sort of becomes the blue icicle.
Oh no!
Don't get it on your skin. Because you look like a Smurf. It will not wash off for a while. Did you drop your phone in the blue stuff and have to fish it out? Because we have to, we personally don't have to do it, but there's ground crew that have to hook up a little outlet and then they dump that after every flight.
Yeah.
And so they come out there with big gloves on and they've got the whole stuff. But I did see a little dude in Indonesia who had the hookup. He had about a foot of pipe and he had a big bucket. And so he walks out there and he goes, I'm the man for the toilet. And I went, what? That's your truck. And he goes, no truck, just bucket. And then I look at his hands and up to his elbows was stained blue. And I went, oh, dude.
You've been doing this for a while, clearly.
Yeah. So he hooked it up. And when he started to pull the handle, that's when I took off running. And I went,
you didn't want to get splashed. Is blue ice a thing? Does it really come down in chunks and fall through people's roofs?
Not anymore. That was a different generation of aircraft. So now it's all kept in a tank.
Did they really flush it out into the air?
Yeah.
They did?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I know. Yeah.
You got what you wanted, Ken. You dug, and there it is.
When did that change?
Well, even up until the point of the Caribou aircraft, there was an aircraft that's a two-engine de Havilland Caribou that was in Vietnam.
Yeah, the Caribou. Yeah.
Speakerphone. You could pee down the speakerphone, and that would be vented to air. So yeah, potentially you could be looking up at next minute.
So you could get rained on by some rando pilot's aerosolized urine. Okay, well I'm glad that things are getting better. But thank you so much, Ben, for being one of the coolest Aussies and pilots and just all around dudes that I know. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you, Ben.
All right.
Nice to meet you, Danielle, finally.
All right.
Yes, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So at the end of a flight, when we're exiting the plane, and if we are delighted enough to be graced with the presence of the pilot to say goodbye, what's like one of the best compliments you could receive as a pilot for someone getting off the plane? So I can store this for future reference.
That was the best landing I've ever witnessed. Like,
Okay.
sometimes, because we're the biggest critics of our own landings.
Okay.
And we're always trying to make the smoothest so you can go, are we down? Did we just touch down? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was able to do it the other day, and it's very, very rare. So you get down, you go, oh yeah, that was good. And the other captain, or the captain goes, yeah, that was good. And then you get up and then you say goodbye to the passengers, and not one of them said nice landing.
Okay.
The very next flight, the captain comes in, bang!
Yeah.
And real thumper. And he had 3 nice landings. So yeah, it was
But they'll tell you. They'll tell you if you mess it up though, right? If you know, they're like,
oh yeah,
give you
they'll tell you.
They'll give you the side eye, like.
Yeah, but it's always nice to get a compliment on your landing. So
Well, there you go.
Okay.
Awesome.
Noted.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I will talk to you again soon.
Talk to you later.
All right. We'll see you later.
Bye, Ben.
All right.